Hey guys, what's up? So I'm back with my introduction to Indian economy part 1.1. Finally, we are starting off with the syllabus in the Indian economy portion. I hope that you would not criticize me any further regarding not teaching and only explaining the syllabus, etc., etc. So, and I am very sure that you would definitely welcome this step because we have worked a lot on preparing slides, on preparing the matter. It has a lot of work that has gone in order to prepare these slides. So I hope you would definitely like all my lessons that I would be preparing for the course. Now, for all those students who have been asking for completing the syllabus before prelims, look, I don't guarantee it, but I would definitely try my best to complete the entire PT syllabus from the point of view of economics till the exam. So, Introduction to Indian Economy Part 1.1, we would read the all concepts pertaining to economy within this lesson, definition of economics. So my this series would be pertaining to what economics is and how would it be approached. This is presented obviously by me, Ayush Sanghi. You can read about me on this link, unacademy.in/user/Ayush Sanghi. So, definition of economics. Economics is entirely based on what are the resources available in the economy and how would those resources be utilized. Let's take my example. I would want so many resources. I want a car, I want a house, I want good clothes to wear, I want good places to go. So, I require so many resources and I have money. That money is limited in number. My salary is only 50,000 rupees or only 1 lakh rupees. How will I afford a trip to a foreign land, a fancy car, a big bungalow? Because my wants are unlimited, but my resources are only limited. So, with the limited resources, I have to satisfy my unlimited wants. How to do this is the study of economy. It can be defined as a science of logically oriented human beings with unlimited wants and limited resources. So, how to distribute limited resources in the unlimited wants of people is what economics teaches us. Let me explain these terms individually to you. Through the term limited resources, we can also understand scarcity. Resources are always limited in number. Please remember this. They are always limited in number. Even if we have sunlight, sunlight is limited as we only get it for 12 hours or maybe 10 hours a day, maybe less than that. So it is scarce. Scarcity. It is limited in number. Hence, we have to make the decision to choose what to consume and what not to consume. The question is how to choose. How to choose among the scarce resources. So the limited or scarce resources available with an individual forces him or her to make choice among its unlimited wants and choose the one he or she prioritizes the most. Hence, we can understand that limited resources with unlimited wants is something that needs to be understood from the point of view of economics. This is the definition of economics. This is the meaning of economics. The beauty of economics as a subject depends upon how it enables you to consume a particular item only by preference and only by giving you a right to choice. I'm sure that economics teaches us right to choice, which is why our constitution makers did not include it as a fundamental right. So, jokes apart, let's take an example. An 8-year-old girl goes to the market with a 10 rupee note in her pocket. With this money, she wishes to buy a pencil, eraser, pen, chocolate, candy. These are so many things that she wishes to consume, which means that she has unlimited wants. But she has only 10 rupees, which means she had limited resources. When she reaches the shop, she realizes that all the above mentioned items cost much more than rupees 10. Thus, now she has to make a choice about what to buy and what not to buy. Study of these choices is economics. The beauty of the subject is that we have to make choices. How to make choices with the limited available resources is what economics teaches us. Now, coming to a formal definition of economics, once you have to quote it in front of everyone or once you have to explain it to someone, economics can also be defined as a behavioral or social science. Why behavioral? Considering that the behavior of the person changes when he has limited resources to consume unlimited project. The study of how individuals and societies choose to use the scarce resources that nature has to provide us. So any kind of resource that nature has to provide us, how do we choose? That is the study of economics. Hence in entirety, it is the study of how people make choices. Now, many of you may be thinking about a question that why should we study economics as a civil service aspirant or as any government services aspirant, SSC, CGL, etc. Why should you study economics? What is the reason behind you to study economics? So I'll explain it to you. What is the reason to study economics and why should you study economics? इतना भी खराब subject नहीं है यार, पढ़ सकते हो. Why should economics be studied? Think as an individual and not as an aspirant. You have to think as an individual, as a citizen of India, as a person, as a consumer, as someone who's constantly looking to buy certain certain resources. When you are given right to choose with limited resources, you would want to know how to use those resources in the best possible manner. Because you have, let's say you are an engineer from this country, from one of the engineering colleges, and you end up earning a package of 50,000 rupees per month. You have to take a house on rent, you have to send money back to your parents, you have to purchase a car, you have to eat out. All these are things. Hence, you are given a right to choose how to use this right wisely with the limited resources, that is 50,000 you have. You would want to know how to use those resources in the best possible manner. Hence, the most fundamental reason for studying economics is opportunity cost. This is a very, very important term when it comes to economics. The entire economics is based upon understanding what opportunity cost is. Opportunity cost is associated with a right to choose and with the use of our resources. So let's understand what opportunity cost means. The decision to give up on something and choose something else is opportunity cost. Like, I decided to teach all you guys, all my 16 to 17,000 odd followers, economics, so hence I'm giving up on certain other aspect of my life. That is my opportunity cost. I love teaching, which is why I've joined this brand Unacademy. The cost of making a specific choice includes what we give up by not making the other choice. I'm not making any other choice to go out and teach, but I'm making this choice of teaching all you guys through this platform. Hence, the thing that I'm leaving, the thing that I've not chosen, is my opportunity cost. The best alternative we choose and the others that we forego or give up when we make a choice or a decision is called the opportunity cost of that decision. This concept applies to all individuals, businesses, and the entire society. Every single person is doing a work by sacrificing some other work. So, whatever they have sacrificed would be considered to be an opportunity for them, and the cost entailed within that would be considered to be opportunity cost. A very, very important concept, which is why we have to choose unlimited wants from the limited resources we have. So, whatever opportunity cost we have, we need to identify it. Let's take an example. Roman has three choices in front of him. You very well know who Roman is. Roman is to start his own entrepreneurial venture. You very well know the name of this venture. Work with of Government of India as an IAS officer or join AIMS as a doctor. He has three choices in front of him. Now these three choices is the unlimited, or you can say the wants that he would want to make. He would want everything. He want to start his entrepreneurial venture also. He want to work as an IAS officer also. He wants to join AIMS as a doctor also. His desires are unlimited, but his resources, his time, his effort, his talent is limited. The three choices are in his order of preference. This he would choose in order of preference. So Roman qualified the IAS exam in the year 2013. Roman qualified as a doctor from AIMS in some or the other year, and he also started his entrepreneurial venture. Now, after doing all three things in 1 year span of time, Roman understood that he cannot do all three things together because he has limited resources. So he came to me and asked me that what should I choose. So I told Roman that you should go ahead with whatever excites you most, and I very well knew what excites him most. Thus, Mr. Roman starts his own venture, his own entrepreneurial venture. The cost involved in making that choice is not only the cost of setting the venture, but also the cost of foregoing his IAS/doctor dream. So he left IAS, he resigned it, and he also left MBBS college, AIMS, as a doctor. This cost may be calculated in terms of his salary, respect received by an IAS or a doctor. So any of these things which is attracted or which attracts any cost would be considered to be this person's, Mr. Roman's, opportunity cost. Hence, whatever he is choosing, he is letting go of some other thing which would be considered to be his opportunity cost. I would be coming out with more of such awesome lessons in my Introduction to Indian Economy series. Follow me on my Unacademy channel for more of such awesome lessons. Thank you. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? I hope you liked my first lesson on Introduction to Indian Economy. Finally, let me assure you that we have begun with the syllabus Introduction to Indian Economy. I will teach you economics as a discipline. In the last lesson, I taught you about Indian economy, approaching Indian economy in terms of economics, making you understand what is economics, opportunity cost, Roman's example, etc. Economics as a discipline needs to be understood. So this lesson is obviously presented by me, Ayush Thangi. I hope you really like my lessons. Please encourage us, contribute on the button which has been given in the bottom of this lesson. This is a platform in which we are asking for contribution just as a voluntary part, not as a compulsory part. I hope you understand what kind of cost it entails to at least make you stream this video or make you see this video online. So appreciate our efforts, contribute wholeheartedly. About me, passionate about teaching, taught at most reputed civil services institutes. Most students will be able to resonate with this. Many of the students have studied from me in Delhi. CA and lawyer, follow me on https://unacademy.in/user/ayusangi. This is my URL link. Follow me on this channel for more of such awesome lessons, plus whatever I would like to give you in addition to these lessons. Let me explain to you why is it called a discipline, and economics as a discipline is something that we need to follow. Whenever we use the term discipline, it simply means that we are trying to ensure or we are trying to give you an aspect which is much more streamlined and much more organized. So, scarce resources and unlimited wants would be a discipline to choose. Hence, economics is a discipline which makes us users disciplined in order how to use these scarce resources. Hence, I would like you to know, never consider economics as a burden which scares you. Don't ever do this. You are doing injustice to the subject. Even those who would definitely say that why do I have to read economics? Why do I have to go through this economics ordeal? It's very, very interesting. Trust me, I'll if you are not interested, I'll generate interest in you by the end of this series. Don't have the following notions that we have to do just this: inflation, stock market, unemployment growth, etc. It is not just, it is all collaborated together, plus many more of such awesome, interesting topics that you need to understand. Trust me, this is not the end of it. This can be a little mind boggling, but if we approach it in a disciplined way, we would be able to understand most of the things. And I personally guarantee it, I would make you understand provided you are willing to work hard. So I'll explain how economics as a discipline originated, or why was there origin of economics as a discipline. Most of the people had the above question in mind and were not able to get the answers for the same. The question was that why are some people rich, why are some people poor? Why are some people getting access to so many of the things, whereas other people are not getting access to anything? Why are richer people getting more richer, whereas poor people are getting poorer? Is it fair? So the 19th century philosophers, philosophy gave origin to something like economics, wanted to get the answer to a simple question like, why are some people rich and some people poor? Is it fair? Now, when they were deciphering the answer to these questions, they thought that we need to read this as a discipline which will be separate from their own discipline, which was philosophy. When these questions regarded segregated thinking means separate thinking, the discipline of economics was born. How to choose or how to understand that who are getting access to resources, who are not getting access to resources, who are able to satisfy their desires, who are not able to satisfy their desires, how do unlimited wants work. This was supposed to be understood as a discipline. Hence, economics was born. Now, economics as a whole term may be very, very mind boggling for you. So, in order to simplify things for you, the most practical way of understanding economics is to branch it out into microeconomics, macroeconomics. Most of you, in fact, all of you may have definitely heard of these terms before: microeconomics, macroeconomics. I would make you understand in the most simplest way what micro and macro mean. Micro, as you already understand, micro means something which is small, something which is single, something which is seen at a micro level, unit level, individual level. So, what is microeconomics? It deals with the functioning of individuals or households or industries or firms or financial institution or government. Any one of the following or all of the following in an individual manner. How do we look at individuals from the point of view of economics? How do we look at households? How do we look at industries? How do we look at firms? We are looking at each of these in an individual fashion and not in a collaborated fashion. When we talk about units, when we talk about individuals, that study is considered to be microeconomics. Understand the term micro. The behavior of the above mentioned individual economic decision making units. What is their behavior? We need to understand their behavior particularly. So, understanding the behavior pertaining to economics, pertaining to the limited resources with unlimited desires, is the entire study of economics. So, the firm's choices about what to produce and how much to charge, household choices about what and how much to buy, helps to explain why the company produces the things it does. Unless until you understand what to produce, how to produce, your decisions won't get impacted, or your decisions would get impacted if you know what to produce, how to produce. Household choices, what to consume, what not to consume. These decisions impact the functioning of the way how an individual functions. When we are understanding it from the individual point of view, we need to specifically answer these questions. Hence, we need to analyze this. This analysis is known as microeconomics. So, what are the general questions that we ask ourselves? Through microeconomics, one can answer questions like, why are some people rich than others? Why is there poverty? Who is considered to be poor? Why some jobs pay more than others? All these questions can be answered through microeconomics because choices are made at the individual level. Whereas on the other hand, what is macroeconomics? It is a study of aggregates. Aggregates means something which is considered to be in totality. In totality, whatever we considered in microeconomics at individual level, when we learn all those things at an aggregate level, they are considered to be macroeconomics. So instead of understanding what determines the output of at individual level, a single firm or an industry, consumption patterns of a single household or a group of households, we start to study all of these things together. Macroeconomics examines the factors that determine national output or national product. Hence, unless until we consider that what needs to be segregated and what doesn't, it leads to chaos. So, macro is something which is happening at an aggregate level. It determines national product. So, let me explain to you with the help of an example. Let's say a household or an individual in a household, he provides services to firms. When he's providing services to firms, he's getting salary in return. Firm is earning profit out of the services required from the household or an individual, and the individual is earning salary. Both people will pay taxes to the government, individual on his salary, firm on its profits. Firm would invest profits into the bank, and individual would also deposit the other income in the bank to earn certain interest. Banks will get certain amount of money which it will give as loans, again to individuals, again to firms. This is how the entire economy works. When we study all of this cycle together, considering households providing services to firms, then to individuals, then to government, then each of this aspect is considered to be within the aspect of macroeconomics. It determines the national output or national product. I hope you understand. This is a very interesting part. So, what we can conclude from this is we can conclude from the above that microeconomics studies the individual unit, household, or firm, or industry. It sees and examines the trees, individual trees. Household is a tree, firm is a tree, industry is a tree. Each of these trees would be examined at the individual level in a household. This is the study of economics known as microeconomics. Whereas, on the other hand, macroeconomics looks at the whole. It sees and analyzes the forest, the entire forest, which means all trees together, all the households, firm, industry, the entire thing. When everything is analyzed, it is considered to be a study of macroeconomics. So, if you are asked a question to determine the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics, please answer the question in the comment section below. I'll be writing the answer after I obtain answers from all of you. I hope you are liking this practice of interactive approach, interactive teaching. I'm sure that you would definitely support me in terms of whatever teaching we are doing. Thank you. Follow me on Unacademy for more such awesome lessons. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? Liking my lessons or not? So you didn't respond much on the part 1.2 series under Introduction to Indian Economy. I repeat the question, differentiate between micro and macroeconomics. Please write the answers. I would give my answer after I evaluate all your answers under that session. So I really like you to participate in this. Look, this is free of cost, high quality education. Still, if you want to voluntarily contribute, I am open to the suggestion. Please do that. Over and above, if I'm telling you or asking you to do something as a teacher, you should be doing it. So I'm continuing with this. I hope you are writing answers and you are getting entertained with the videos that I'm taking. Introduction to Indian Economy 1.3, Economic Policy of the Government. What is economic policy? How is it determined? What are the actions taken by the government? Let's understand each and every aspect. Presented by me, Ayush Sanghi. By this time, you may have learnt my name. At least, I'm hoping so. So follow me on this username unacademy.in/user/Ayush Sanghi. Let me make you understand what economic policy means. What is economic policy? Any kind of policy which is implemented by the government. Look, economic policy can only be at a stage of the nation, at a stage of the government, at a stage of a state. Hence, a person like me, an individual cannot implement an economic policy. But something when it comes to a policy, niti, something that has to be implemented, it impacts the entire nation. So whatever policy has been taken by, let's say, the government of India or by the state, and what its impact will be, determines what economic policy is. Hence, every action taken by any country's government to influence its economy, every single action taken by the government. So take it and understand it from the point of view of India's example. India's example, what are the actions taken by the government? The finance ministry, it gives us the economic survey before issuing the budget. After that comes the railway budget. After that comes the union budget. And there are time and again many amendments that are made throughout the ordeal of the entire year. all of those actions are considered to be impacting the economy of this country. They are influencing our economy. Hence, all those actions are termed as a part of our economic policy. So, all the actions taken by the government of India would be considered to be impacting the economic policy of India. Let me make you understand how. Planning Commission was had come in 1950. First 5-year plan came in 1951. The 5-year plans in India are a part of India's economic policy. The second 5-year plan was centered around industrialization, and the country opened 4 steel plants. So, excuse the spelling, it was 4 steel plants in the year 1956. You very well know all those places: Rourkela, Bokaro, etc. Durgapur, in collaboration with foreign countries. By the way, this is a PT question. Please remember this. In PT, it can be asked and match the following, that these 4 steel plants were opened in which country's association. So you have to remember Russia, UK, Germany, किस किस के उसमें हुआ था. India adopted a mixed economy approach where both public sector and a private sector would play a role in the economy. Yes, this would be considered to be a government decision. Earlier, pre 1991, we were a closed economy. After that, we turned into a mixed economy. What was the role played by our government? What was the role played by the country? Thus, our Industrial Policy Resolution 1948, Industrial Policy 1956, and later 91 revolved around that philosophy. These are the examples that would influence or that would impact our economic policy. Another example can be in 1965, India embarked on Green Revolution, and it resulted in improving the agricultural sector tremendously. This was a step which was taken by the Indian government by introducing the Green Revolution seeds, high yielding variety seeds H5V. At the same time, it solved the problem of food security for India. So, you are able to understand what the kind of decisions were made in order to influence the economy of this country. This is considered to be economic policy for India. So, what is the objective of economic policy? The first and the foremost, most important objective is efficiency. It brings in efficiency, or it brings in the kind of efficiency which is required in an economy. An efficient economy is one that produces what people want at the least possible cost. Minimum possible cost. How would this efficiency be brought? Only if the government takes actions. Just think, if the government is not taking actions and the private sector is doing all the work, there would be no efficiency. Why would there not be any efficiency? Reason being that goods would be provided, even government provide goods, but the private sector would not be providing goods at the least possible cost, because they are only working for one thing, and that is, you understand it right, profit. If the system allocates resources to the production of things that nobody wants, it is inefficient. So remember this, our government can be considered to be a socialist government. Hence, in order to maintain this efficiency in the economy, it would like to implement, or you can say launch things at the least possible cost. That is considered to be efficiency. For example, majority of people in Delhi want more dispensaries for affordable medicines, but the Delhi government chooses to provide them with free water and electricity, which nobody is getting any benefit out of. Then it is an inefficient allocation. So it is all about allocation of budgets. You understand this Delhi government example. All of you know about what I'm talking about, free water and electricity. It is inefficient allocation. Another objective is equity. Equity means equal distribution of income and wealth. This is a far-fetched dream. It is bound to not happen in a country like India. Reason being, many reasons behind that. And why I say this is a strong meaning of equity. A more equal distribution of income and wealth. Equal distribution means that you want income to be distributed in each and everyone's hands who are unequal and who are considered to be more than equal. So, distribution of income and wealth, what is being done in order of equity? The rich are being taxed highly and the super rich are being taxed much highly. For example, it is a technical concept, as equity may imply poverty alleviation, but the extent to which the poor should receive cash benefits from the government is a subject of enormous disagreement. So, this is a skewed concept, but still an objective of economic policy about how to achieve equity. If we are hoping of poverty alleviation, should we provide them with services, subsidized food grain, subsidized houses, or shall we just give them cash? It is a bone of contention. The third objective is growth. It is often defined in terms of economic growth. Economic growth, or increase in GDP of this country or national income of this country. Economic growth is an increase in, you can say, the total output of an economy. Total output. And there are many contributors to this total output, including every individual, firm, business, schools, colleges, financial institution, banks, RBI, NABARD, RRB, government, etc. Every single person is contributing towards this. So any change in economic policy would impact the growth, because it would impact the decisions of all these people. If output grows faster than the population, output per capita capita rises. Per capita means individuals' income and standards of living increase. So output is growing faster, which means people are earning more and more and spending more and more. In that case, the per capita income for each and every person would rise. If the per capita income rises, obviously the standard of living would increase. This is considered to be the third and the final objective of economic policy. Oops, I'm left with another objective that is considered to be stability. It also provides stability, not a very profound objective, which is why I said final, but let me make you understand what stability means. It refers to the condition in which national output is growing steadily considering low inflation and full employment. Now, these two are very, very important terms, and you may even think that what is so special about maintaining stability. Now, it is the most challenging thing that you need to remember. I always equate this with the maturity phase of any business. So a business is growing like this. First, it is in its introductory phase, then growth phase, then comes the maturity phase. When the business is in the maturity phase, it needs stability, which means that it has achieved to the height of sale. For example, Bajaj scooters. Bajaj scooter has the maximum market share. Now it needs to remain stable. What do we mean by stability in case of Bajaj Auto? It means that it needs to keep on providing quality at the least possible cost to every single person. Similarly, at the level of a country, if the country has maintained or it has achieved the maturity phase, it has to keep on maintaining low inflation and keep on maintaining full employment or maximum employment. Hence, stability would be organized or stability would be achieved. So, this also becomes an objective of the economic policy. So, four objectives of economic policy. Let's recapitulate it once. The code is EEGS or GEES, GEES. Efficiency, equity, growth, and stability. I hope you are liking my lessons. I would be coming out with more of such awesome lessons. Follow me on Unacademy. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? So I got huge response from my earlier three lessons on Introduction to Indian Economy 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So these three lessons or this particular lesson or series is on the first chapter. So you can consider that Introduction to Indian Economy series which is going on. This is the first chapter. This would complete many concepts as I would be coming out with them on a periodic basis. Market forces and demand is our next lesson that we would be focusing upon understanding. How does the demand get created and what are the market forces that act on this demand? Presented by Ayush Sanghi. If you want to read about me, you can read on this link of unacademy.in/user/Ayush Sanghi. Let me make you understand what market forces are. So, on the basis of an example, we'll understand it better. When there is adverse monsoon, which means bad monsoon or monsoon fails in India, the prices of food rise throughout the country. Daam बढ़ जाते हैं, दाल के, चावल के, etc. Everything's prices rise. As the mercury levels rise in Delhi, prices of hotel rooms in a hill station increase because people start to go over there. Why does this happen? What makes these incidences take place? During the summer holidays of children, the prices of air tickets for tourism rise. What do all these events have in common? They have that when the demand for these things, like the hotel rooms in hill station, flight tickets in case of tourism, summer holidays, in case of food when there is adverse monsoon. So the thing is that in any kind of adversity, the demand for all these things go up. They all show the working of demand and supply. So the demand of all these things are going up, which is why the suppliers are even charging higher price for this demand. So in this context, the supply and demand are used by economists in context of market forces. When we need to understand market, they determine the quantity of each good produced and the price at which it is sold. So whatever good has been produced and whatever price for each good has been inferred. If one wants to know how any policy change will affect the economy, one must think first about how it will affect the supply and demand. A very logical question. Unless until we understand that how will it affect demand or even supply, we haven't understood market forces properly. So let's make you understand. This is the theory of demand and supply as we have understood. It considers how buyers and sellers react and how they interact with each other. So in the very first lesson, I told you that it is a behavioral approach. Microeconomics and macroeconomics is about behavior of the consumer. Similarly, we consider about or we get to know about the behavior of buyers, behavior of sellers, how would they react, how would they interact with each other. It shows how supply and demand determine prices in a market economy and how prices in turn allocate the economy's scarce resources. Both these things are complementary to each other or they support each other. How would supply and demand determine prices in the market? And in turn, how would suppliers allocate the resources in the economy's scarce resources? This is how to understand market forces. So, On the basis of these concepts, first we would start understanding what is demand. Demand, the most famous term, the most famous microeconomic term you can so as to say, demand. If I need to buy something, I need to have the willingness to buy for it. That is known as demand. The willingness to buy or the willingness to purchase is considered to be demand for a particular good. The quantity demanded of any good is the amount of the good that buyers are willing and able to purchase. That is quantity demanded of a good. If you are asked what is demand, you have to write willingness to buy or purchase. If you are asked what is quantity demanded, the quantity demand of any good is the amount of good that a buyer is able to afford or is able to buy for a price or able to purchase for a price. Hence, many factors determine the quantity demanded of any good. But while analyzing how many markets work, one factor plays a central role is the price of a good. I may have willingness to buy a Mercedes, but do I have the money to buy that Mercedes? That would determine my quantity demanded. So even if my willingness to buy is there, do I have the purchase capacity to buy it? Hence, it is determined on the basis of price of a good. I may only be able to afford a Honda City, which is worth much less as compared to a Mercedes. So my willingness to buy is huge, but my affordability factor, which means depends upon the price of the good, is very very less. If the price of the gulab jamun, I know that many of you love gulab jamun, which is why I've taken this example. I could have taken gulab jamun with ice cream, but let's stick to gulab jamun. Rose to rupees 100 per piece. कभी हो सकता है इतना? हाँ, 2100 2100 सन 2100 में 100 रुपए का गुलाब जामुन मिलेगा आप लोगों को. गुलाब जामुन रोज टू रुपीज 100 पर पीस. यू वुड बाय लेस गुलाब जामुन. लेस क्या, आप बिल्कुल भी नहीं खरीदोगे. इफ द प्राइस ऑफ गुलाब जामुन फेल टू रुपीज 10 पर पीस, इतना सस्ता भी कहीं नहीं मिलता है, यू वुड बाय मोर, आप ज़्यादा खा जाओगे. बिकॉज द क्वांटिटी डिमांडेड फॉल्स एज द प्राइस राइजेस एंड द राइजेस as the price falls. We say that the quantity demanded is negatively related to the price, or rather, the correct appropriate word would be inversely related to price. So, less the price, more would be the quantity demanded. More the price, less would be the quantity demanded. This is considered to be inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. This relationship between price and quantity demanded is true for most goods in the economy, and economists call it the law of demand. Now, we say most goods. We never say all goods, reason being that there are always certain exceptions to this rule. So, through this particular slide, you have come to know about three concepts: what is demand, what is quantity demanded, and what is law of demand. So, let me give you an insight about. Hence, it can be derived that other things equal या बाकी चीज़ों को सेम रखने के माध्यम से, which means ceteris paribus. In economic terms, many of the economics books, including NCRT class 11 and class 12, it quotes ceteris paribus, CETERIS PARIBUS. When the price of a good rises, the quantity demanded of the good falls, and when the price falls, the quantity demanded rises, which means vice versa. This is only true if all other things are equal or are held constant. We are not considering any other factor, which means government policies, taxation rates, taste and preference of the consumer. We are simply considering two factors. One is price and the other is quantity demanded. So if we consider price and quantity demanded, if the price rises, quantity falls, and vice versa in case of understanding law of demand. So if we have to diagrammatically represent it, how would we represent it? Law of demand. This is increase in price and decrease in quantity demanded. So if the price is increasing at P1, then the quantity demanded is less at Q1. If the price decreases to P3, quantity demanded is more at Q3. Price, quantity demanded. Hence, we get a downward sloping demand curve. This is a price quantity relationship. It is considered to be an inverse relationship, downward sloping demand curve. So when we have to prove the law of demand, all other factors remaining constant, we would prove it by this concept where we understand price and quantity are inversely related always. Mind you, always they are inversely related. Hence, the downward sloping line relating price and quantity demanded is called the demand curve, as we have understood. Now, a relating concept is movement along the demand curve. Movement means how to move along the demand curve. Changes along a curve refers to a movement along a demand curve. A movement along a demand curve occurs when a change in the quantity demanded is caused only by a change in price. So let's say the price in our very diagram rose from P1 to P2. Somebody would move on the demand curve either upward or downward. That is considered to be movement. When there is a movement along the demand curve, a movement denotes a change in both price and quantity demanded from one point to another on the curve. A movement along the demand curve will occur when the price of a good changes and the quantity demanded changes in accordance to the original demand relationship. Let me make you understand through the help of an example or a diagram. This is considered to be movement. This is movement. Downward movement, upward movement. So if the price rises from P5 to P4, quantity demanded falls from Q5 to Q4. Hence, a person would move from this black dot to this black dot. On the other hand, if price of a good reduces from P1 to P2, so the quantity demanded increases from Q1 to Q2. Hence, a person would move downward on this demand curve. So moving downward means price is continuously falling and quantity demanded is rising. Upward movement of demand curve means quantity consuming is falling whereas the prices are rising. So which is why it can be determined that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Movement along the demand curve. I hope you are understanding the lessons. We are working very hard on arranging the slides, etc. So movement is a concept that is not to be confused with shift in the demand curve. Shift is a separate concept. I would be explaining that concept in my next lesson 1.5. Till then, stay blessed. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? So, I'm getting a very good response on my earlier four lessons about Introduction to Indian Economy. I'm glad you are liking the series. Today, we'll discuss about the concept of demand. Rather, we'll continue on the concept of demand as we had carried forward in the last lesson. So, in the last lesson, we had discussed about the definition, what is demand. We had discussed about what is movement along the demand curve, how does the law of demand work, what is quantity demanded, etc. Today, I'll make you understand many interesting concepts. Follow me on Unacademy on this link. I would always be available to take your doubts. You can write to me on my mail ID. You can write to me on my concept account. I have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook account. You can write to me anywhere. I would definitely answer all your queries. So I like keeping in touch with all my students, with all my followers. Let's make you understand market demand versus individual demand. When we talk about demand of an individual or demand of one person, that is considered to be individual demand. When we talk about demand of all individuals combined, that is considered to be market demand. Looking at the diagrams in the last lesson, so if you remember, we had done the last lesson, we had understood the concept of many demand curves in terms of downward sloping demand curve. The demand curve shows an individual's demand for a product. To analyze how markets work, we need to determine the market demand, the sum of all the individual demands for a particular good or service. How does a particular good or service and its demand work? For that, we need to understand market demand and all the demand of every single marketable good. The graph in figure 2, this is given in the next slide, shows the demand curve for the first and the second consumer. I have taken the example of two consumers. We have to sum the individual demand curves horizontally to obtain the market demand curve. So please remember, market demand curve is the demand curve in totality for all the consumers together. That is, to find the total quantity demanded at any price, we add the individual quantities found on the horizontal axis of the individual demand curves. So how does it look? This is the second figure, demand curve for consumer 1, demand curve for consumer 2. Demand curve for consumer 1 is at 5, when the price is 5, he likes to consume the least. When the price is 1, he likes to consume the maximum, downward sloping. Consumer 2, when the price is 4, he likes to consume the least. When the price is 1, he likes to consume the most, downward sloping. These are the two individual demand curves for first and second consumer. When we take the aggregate of these two demand curves, we have to add that if they have to consume at the, let's say, maximum possible price, which is market demand curve D1 plus D2, it would be at 5 rupees, hence 5. It would be taking what? 5 plus 4 units, which is considered to be 9 units as demand. This is the market demand curve of each of these individuals, first and the second consumer. I hope you are getting the concept. This is market demand versus individual demand curve under this concept. So, market demand curve shows how the quantity demanded of a good varies as the price of the good varies. So if the price of the good is varying, how would the market demand curve be affected? It would become a much more vertical, it might become horizontal, it might become flat, while all the factors that affect how much consumers want to buy are held constant. So you may remember I had explained you a term by the name of ceteris paribus. That is an economic term. You may even Google it. You will come to know about what market demand curve means or what constant means. So market demand curve would be affected if individual components of each of the price quantity demanded are affected. Now the last concept in demand is about shift in the demand curve. we know that there is movement along the demand curve, but that is always along the demand curve. In the concept of movement, we never give rise to a new demand curve. Whereas there is a concept by the name of shift in the demand curve, where we give a rise to, a reason to, a new concept by the name of shifting in demand curve. So a new demand curve is coming up in shift in the demand curve. When we talk about a new demand curve, it means that the old demand curve is redundant and the consumer has shifted to a new demand curve. So, through an example, the demand curve for ice cream shows how much ice cream people buy at any given price, holding constant the many other factors beyond price that influence consumers' buying decision. This is considered, or this would lead to one single price and quantity demanded because other factors are held constant. But in case of shift of a demand curve, let me make you understand, or let me show you the diagram that a new demand curve is obtained. So D1 is the old demand curve. This is where the entire concept of P1 and Q1 was operating. So a consumer was demanding Q1 goods at P1 price. Yes, he was. If the price increases, or you can say the consumer is willing to demand a higher priced good or a higher quantity of the same good, let's say at a higher price, this would result into a shift in demand curve. It means that if the price of the good increases, his quantity demanded for that good also increases. It would lead to a shift in the demand curve, a new demand curve D2 will be obtained. Don't you think this is a skewed concept? Don't you think this is a very bizarre concept, considering that I had told you there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. But when we talk about shift, it is shift in the demand curve, where other factors that were earlier held constant, remember, other factors that were earlier held constant, they are now being considered. So, what are those other factors which are being considered? Let's understand. As a result, this demand curve need not be stable over time. Any change that increases the quantity demanded at every price shifts the demand curve to the right and is called an increase in demand. So if the demand curve shifts to the right, it would be considered to be increase in demand. Any change that reduces the quantity demanded at every price shifts the demand curve to the left and is called decrease in demand. So you very well know increase and decrease means what? Shift would lead to either increase and decrease in demand, but we would definitely get a new demand curve. Here comes the first difference between movement and shift in demand curve. Movement happens along the same demand curve, whereas shift happens in or along by making a new demand curve, either to the left or to the right. So, what leads to shift in the demand curve? Let's understand the variables affecting shift in the demand curve. First of them being income, very, very important. My income increased. Earlier, I was purchasing P1 at Q1. Now my income increased and so does the price of this good. So if the price is increasing, then technically my quantity demanded should decrease, if you remember what I mean. So I told you increase in price leads to decrease in quantity demanded, inverse relationship. But in this case, what we are saying, because my income is increased, so I don't mind buying the same good at a higher price. Hence my quantity demanded will also increase. It would lead to a shift in demand curve. So now we are considering this is the other factor which we are considering. So if you remember the other factors that we had held constant, it led to understanding that there is an inverse relationship. So there I technically highlighted most goods, if you remember. Most goods mean on most of the goods this concept of inverse relationship would work, but not on all goods, because many goods are an exception where these variables would affect the shift in demand curve. So in order to understand the effect of an increase or decrease in income, we first need to distinguish between normal and inferior goods. Normal goods. From here, types of goods would understand. This is very, very important for PT. A good for which other things equal, an increase in income leads to an increase in demand. So if my income would increase and so does my demand, automatically it would lead to a shift in the demand curve to the right. If the income falls, the demand for ice cream will fall and the demand curve will shift towards the left. If the income rises, the demand curve for ice cream will rise and the demand curve will shift toward the right. So it is rightward demand curve in case of normal goods. Normal goods is considered to be directly proportional, where it acts on the basis of the consumer's income. Normal good. If the consumer is demanding such good, where if his income is increasing, the quantity demanded is also increasing. It is an example of a normal good. Please remember this. If asked in PT, which of the following is the example of normal good, then you have to state that something which leads to an increase in income and increase in demand. So those goods, the increase of income, which would lead to increase in demand, that is a normal good. Let's take an example. If my income increases, earlier with my limited income, I used to eat outside in a restaurant twice a month. Now with increase in income, I would be eating out 4 times a month. Hence, eating out becomes a normal good. On the other hand, I was consuming half kg of salt till last month when my income was X. Now my income has become 2x. So would I be consuming 1 kg of salt? No, not at all, because salt is an inferior good. A good for which other things equal, an increase in income leads to a decrease in demand or stability in demand. As your income falls, you are less likely to buy a car or take a cab and more likely to ride in a bus. So riding in a bus becomes an inferior good where it increases, or the demand for bus increases and the demand for car or cab decreases. Consumption of salt, it would not increase. On the contrary, it would remain same or it would decrease with the increase in income. These are two examples of types of goods, normal and inferior good. So please remember, in a normal good, if increase in income would lead to rightward shift in the demand curve, inferior good with increase in income, it would result into a leftward shift in demand curve. Inversely proportional, both types of goods. Very, very important for exam, may be asked. Next types of variables affecting shift in demand curve to be continued in next lesson. Thank you. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? I'm back with my continuation of the lesson, concept of demand. So if you remember, we were discussing about the concept of demand in my earlier lesson, where I was making you understand what are the factors or variables affecting shift in the demand curve. So we had understood certain variables in my last lesson, which were income on the basis of normal and inferior goods. In this lesson, I would make you understand all the leftover or the remaining variables. So amongst them, the first variable is, you can follow me on this user link of Unacademy. The first variable is presence of substitute goods. What do substitute goods mean? Substitute means exactly substitutable or something which is usable instead of one thing. Coke and Pepsi are substitutable. If there is no Coke, you can have Pepsi. If there is no Pepsi, and you can have Coke. Obviously, if you are Coke loyalist, then you might not touch Pepsi and you will die of thirst. But I'm not talking about those fanatics. I'm talking about those people who are or who will consume the other product if one is not available. So two goods for which increase in the price of one leads to an increase in the demands for the other. So if Coke and Pepsi are available in the market for, let's say, 10 rupees each, a 300 ml glass bottle is available for 10 rupees each. Both are substitutable for each. I can buy Coke, I can buy Pepsi. I wish to have Coke. Now if the price of Pepsi falls to, let's say, 9 rupees, the price of Pepsi has fallen and Coke did not touch its price. So by the time, till the time of Pepsi leaving its rate unchanged or at rupees 10, Coke was having a normal downward sloping demand curve where price and quantity demanded were inversely proportional. But now, due to the presence of substitute good, Pepsi decreases its price. So automatically, without touching the price of Coke, its quantity demanded would decrease because some of the Coke people would shift to Pepsi. This is considered to be shift in the demand curve due to the presence of substitute goods. So Coke and Pepsi in as example. Another example can be tea and coffee. If the price of coffee rises, then people will demand less and less of coffee and the demand for its nearest substitute, that is tea, will increase. This will shift the demand curve for tea to the right. Hence, tea would shift to the right, whereas coffee would shift to the left. Presence of substitute goods. On the other hand, second is complementary goods. Two goods for which an increase in the price of one leads to a decrease in the demand for the other. So there are many factors which leads to increase in demand for one and decrease in the demand for other. Let's say we can take the example of perfect complements. It can be car and petrol or tea and sugar, coffee and sugar. Car and petrol, if you buy car, or let's say if the prices of the car go down, you can buy more and more of car and the demand for petrol would automatically increase. This is considered to be a complement. So petrol never touched its rate, but still its demand curve would shift to the right because of the presence of complement. On the other hand, if the price of the car rises, the demand for car would fall and automatically the demand for petrol would also fall. It would lead to leftward shift in the demand curve for petrol. So petrol and car are considered to be complements. Similarly, coffee and sugar. If the price of coffee falls according to the law of demand, people will buy more of coffee, naturally, adverse relationship. Yet in this case, the demand for sugar will also increase because coffee and sugar are used together. So one who's having more of coffee would have sugar with coffee, similarly with petrol and car and computers and software. These are the variable affecting shift in demand curve. The other variables are taste and preference. Yes, I am a vegetarian, and the demand curve for vegetarian food is downward sloping, where the price is constant and the quantity demanded is also same. The price did not touch itself, but still the quantity demanded of vegetarian food reduced because I switched from being a vegetarian to a non-vegetarian. My taste changed. Because of my change in taste, automatically the demand curve would shift to either to the left or to the right. One of the most important determinant of demand is the taste of an individual, taste and preference. If an individual likes ice cream, then he will buy more of it. The change in taste shifts the demand curve as well. So I like more of non-vegetarian, it would shift my demand curve for non-vegetarian food to the right, whereas vegetarian food, without disturbing its prices, would shift to the left. Another variable affecting the demand curve. Next is expectation. Expectation of future prices, expectation of certain things. Expectations about the future may affect the demand for a good or service today. So, if I know that the price of a particular share in the stock market is about to rise or is expected to rise, I would buy more and more of it today. If one expects to earn a higher income next month, one may choose to save less now and spend more of current income on buying some goods. So, this is on the basis of expectation. I will get more money next month, I will buy more of such goods today. This is on the basis of expectation. Hence, these goods price, or you can say these goods demand, would rise without change in price. Number of buyers, very important variable. Number of buyers, since market demand is right from individual demands, it depends on all those factors that influence individual demand. In addition, it also depends on number of buyers. If A, another consumer of ice cream, was to join B and C, the quantity demanded in the market would be higher at every price, and the demand curve would shift to the right. This is why, because B and C are joined by A, who is the third consumer of ice cream. He's a third consumer. These are the variables affecting shift in demand curve. But are these the only variables? This would lead to shift in demand curve, which means increase and decrease would lead to shift, either rightward or leftward shift in demand curve, or there is something else to it. Exception to the law of demand. What is an exception? Giffen goods. So the concept of Giffen goods was given by a person by the name of Robert Giffen, who said that the law of demand is defeated by such kind of goods or by such nature of people who are demanding certain goods. So with increase in price, the quantity demanded is increasing. With reduction in price, the quantity demanded is decreasing. It leads to direct relationship between price and quantity demanded, which is defeating the law of demand concept that we had understood in our earlier lessons. Those goods that do not comply with the law of demand are considered to be Giffen goods. It is a good for which demand increases as the price increases and falls when the price decreases. ऐसा कब होता है? Let's understand an example. A given good has an upward sloping demand curve because there is a direct relationship between price and quantity demanded, which is contrary to the fundamental law of demand, which states that quantity demanded for a product falls as the price increases, resulting in a downward slope for a demand curve. A given good is typically an inferior product that does not have easily available substitutes, hence the name Giffen. So, let me make you understand through an example. Giffen good is related to an Irish potato famine in the 19th century. The concept was given by Robert Giffen, which is by the name Giffen good. Potato yani aloo. During the famine, as the price of potatoes rose, famine yani sukha, impoverished consumers had little money left for more nutritious but expensive food items like meat. सो पोटैटोज़ के प्राइस बढ़ गए, बट जो बाकी के खाने वाले गुड्स थे, द रेस्ट ऑफ द आइटम्स फॉर ईटिंग अदर दैन पोटैटोज़ वर मच मोर एक्सपेंसिव दैन पोटैटोज़ even after increased price of potato. So the people who were considered to be poor, they had no choice but to consume potatoes at more quantity even with increase in price. So even though they would have preferred to buy more meat and fewer potatoes, the lack of money led them to buy more potatoes and less of meat. Reason being, potatoes was the cheapest and the rise in prices of potatoes was still less than the prices of meat. So they bought more of potatoes even at higher prices. On the other hand, when the prices of potatoes would reduce, they would be left with much more income. So instead of consuming more of potatoes, they would shift to an expensive food product, which is meat. They would start consuming meat and less of potatoes. This is considered to be an exception to the law of demand, where according to these goods, which are considered to be Giffen goods, we would get an upward sloping demand curve. Rest. The other is, you can say, natural calamities. They give rise to emergency situations. So, in situations like flood and famine, people don't give a heck about what the prices are. They stock up goods to avoid any shortage, even though when there may be an increase in price. For example, Tamil Nadu floods in India was no less than a calamity. Hence, the people were in grave need of food and water, and during such times, prices hardly matter. So, they would consume at any price whatever they like. Natural calamities, even Uttarakhand floods had the same situation. Fashionistas, fashion trend. Youngsters everywhere generally follow the latest trends that are in fashion. So you may have the fashion of, you can say, having or putting up, you can say, a deodorant or a Livestrong band or any kind of branded product. So branded products are bought by consumers even if they witness price increase. Also, out of fashion products do not find many takers even when their prices are cut. So anything which is in fashion is considered to be an exception to the law of demand, upward sloping demand curve. And lastly, anticipation of prices. If the consumers are expecting the prices to rise further, then they will buy more in the present to avoid buying at higher prices in the near future. Shares, gold. Similarly, if the prices are failing, then the consumers will buy less to enjoy the advantages of reduced prices later on. Same shares and gold. So, if the price is less right now, I would buy more of gold. If the price is increasing at a slower pace, I would keep on buying gold till the time it reaches its maximum. And when it is maximum and falling, I wouldn't buy until it falls entirely. So, these are the exceptions to the law of demand. This is the finishing to the demand curve or the demand concepts. I would be coming out with supply concepts in my next lesson. Thank you. Stay blessed. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? So I'll continue with my series on Introduction to Indian Economy, part 1.7. This chapter was all about understanding the microeconomic concept of demand and supply. I hope you are liking the series. Please reply on the comment section below. And as you already know that this is a voluntary objective, so please don't forget to contribute. If you are really liking the lessons genuinely, please contribute towards it. Some of the contribution would come to me as an educator, and some would go to the firm unacademy.in to hire new educators and to develop quality content. So this lesson is presented by me, Ayush Sanghi. A little detail about me. I have taught at most of the civil services institutes. I am a CA lawyer. Follow me on this link, https://unacademy.in /user /Ayush Sanghi. So let me explain to you the concept of supply through this lesson. Supply is just the opposite of demand. Demand meant willingness to buy from the point of view of buyer, whereas supply means willingness to sell from the point of view of seller. So the quantity supplied of any good is the amount that sellers are willing and able to sell. Both things should be important. Willing means that he should be willing to sell, and second, he should also have the capacity to manufacture such items and to sell them. So willingness and ability to sell constitutes supply. There are many determinants of quantity supplied, but again, price plays a central role in analysis. Just like in demand, price plays a central role. So, how supply is opposite from the concept of demand? When we understood demand, it was price from the point of view of buyer. A buyer is price sensitive, hence, he would like to pay a lesser price for more quantity of goods. So, price played a central role from the point of view of demand in our last lessons. And in this lesson, price plays a sensitive role from the point of view of supplier. A supplier, if he is getting a higher price or a good price for his supply, he would like to supply more and more. Hence, it can be considered to be willingness or desire to sell at a particular price. When the price of cold drink, let's say for an example, is high, selling cold drink is profitable and hence the quantity supplied is large. So the prices being high, motivation of suppliers is also high, hence they produce a lot. So the quantity supplied is large. On the other hand, if the price is low, what would happen? The suppliers would not be supplying as much and hence the cold drink selling would not become that much profitable. Hence they would supply less. So, on this very basis, we draw the analogy that, on the contrary, when the price of cold drink is low, the business is less profitable, and so sellers produce less cold drink. And this is true for most of the goods where sellers would not like to produce if they are getting lesser price or lesser profit. At a low price, some sellers may choose to shut down their business if their quantity supplied falls to zero or maybe negative or very, very low. In all three cases, they would try to close down their business. On this very basis, we understand that as the quantity supplied rises as the price rises and falls as the price falls, we say that quantity supplied is directly proportional to the price of the good. Very, very important. So, this is opposite from demand. In demand, the quantity demanded was inversely proportional to price, which means that increase in quantity or quantity demanded would increase if the price decreases and vice versa, which is why we got a downward sloping demand curve in case of demand. But supply is absolutely the opposite. Higher the price, higher would be the quantity supplied. So the law of supply states that relationship between price and quantity supplied is called the law of supply. So the relationship between price and quantity supplied is direct. Hence, we get an upward sloping supply curve. Other things remaining equal, which means ceteris paribus, when the price of a good rises, the quantity supplied of a good also rises, and when the price falls, the quantity supplied also falls. This is the issue, or this is what we can say as the agenda for understanding the law of supply through a diagram. So this is the diagram which depicts law of supply. Upward sloping supply curve on the basis of increase in price and increase in quantity supplied. So more the price, higher would be the motivation to supply by the supplier, and we would get an upward sloping supply curve. So this is telling us the direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Let's understand from this very point of view that this law of supply curve is depicting an individual supply curve or one single entity supply curve. If we need to have a supply curve from the point of view of individual worker versus market supply, just like we had an individual demand versus market demand, we need to club all the supply curve which in order to give us the market supply. So we may have multiple individuals like individual A, B and C. We can add up the supply of A, B and C and get the market supply. So the curve relating to price and quantity supplied is called the supply curve. Market supply is the sum of the supplies of all the sellers. So we can have multiple source sellers in this very diagram. This may be supplier A, another may be supplier B, the third one may be supplier C. We add up all three and we get the total market supply. So individual supply versus market supply, when we sum the individual supply curves horizontally, we get the market supply curves just like we just saw in the diagram. In order to find the total quantity supplied at any price, the individual quantities found on the horizontal axis of the individual supply curves are added. So what we had understood in demand also was that when we are adding up, let's say supplier A, B and C, all three, how much they supply, this needs to be added. And how much they supply or the quantity is depicted on the x-axis. Hence, we add the horizontal axis first. So the market supply curve shows how the quantity supplied of a good varies as the price of the good varies, while all the factors that affect how much suppliers want to sell are held constant, which means ceteris paribus. On this very basis, I would like to make you understand the concept of shift in supply curve. So far we've understood supply, we have understood law of supply, and now we would understand shift in supply curve, which means the supply curve would shift to either of the directions, whether to the right or to the left. How would it shift? What would be the factors that would lead to the shift in supply curve? The supply curve in the diagram for good X, you can say, shows how much good X producers offer for sale at any given price, holding constant all other factors beyond price that influence producers' decisions and how much to sell. So if we get an upward sloping supply curve, it simply means that upward sloping supply curve has been obtained because we are holding all other factors as constant. This relationship can fluctuate over time, which is represented by a shift in supply curve. Example, suppose the price of rubber falls because rubber is an input into producing tires. Hence, the input price has fallen. The fall in the price of rubber makes selling tires more profitable as it is cheap. Hence, this might lead to shift in supply curve. This raises the supply of tires at any given price. Sellers are now willing to produce a larger quantity. Thus, the supply curve for tires shifts to the right. This is known as rightward shift of supply curve. On the other hand, take the flip side example. If the price of rubber falls, or if you can say the price of rubber rises, then tire production would not be as profitable. Hence, in that case, the supply curve would shift to the left. So here we draw an analogy from 2 points of view, shift in supply curve. So the conclusion is rightward shift of supply curve means that the supply curve shifting towards the right. This means that this is good for the supplier. As the price reduces or the input price reduces, he would like to supply more, hence the rightward shift. Any change that raises the quantity supplied at every or any price shifts the supply curve to the right and is called an increase in supply. So this is raising in quantity supplied at every or any price. Mind you, here price is not changing, but the input price, or you can say the raw material price, is changing. Tire, as you can remember, if the price of tire falls, then automatically we can say that it would shift the supply curve, or it would increase the motivation to supply more. Hence the supply curve would shift to the right. On the other hand, leftward shift of supply curve means any change that reduces the quantity supplied at any and every price. So opposite whatever the prices of input are, we haven't touched the prices, we haven't changed the prices, but the prices of input, whatever we were inputting into that entire scenario, that entire price of input, you can say it increases. If the price of input increases, the motivation of the supplier to produce or the motivation of the supplier to supply is reduced, hence he will supply less. So at any and every price shifts the supply curve to the left and is called a decrease in supply. So this concept is about the shift in supply curve. Hence we understand the concept of shift from the point of view of not all other factors remaining constant, but price of inputs or any other factor affecting that entire supply curve. So rightward shift, leftward shift is a concept which is an extension to law of supply and the normal supply curve. So if you like the video, please hit the contribute button. This money would come up to me. It would motivate me to make more and more lessons, more and more quality lessons for all you guys. So please contribute. Thank you. God bless. Hey guys, what's up? So I'm back with my Introduction to Indian Economy series 1.8, the variables affecting supply curve. So in the last lesson I had discussed about how the supply curve gets made. Supply curve is upward sloping. It is affected by the price as well as quantity supplied from the point of view of supplier. How does supplier come to know about whether to produce more or less? What is the motivation of the supplier to produce? Obviously it is the price. So in the last lesson, I had discussed about a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Reason being that the supplier would be motivated to produce higher at a higher price and vice versa, lower at a lower price. But this thing or this analogy is true only when you can say that there is other factors remaining constant or ceteris paribus. When we start talking about something like the other factors coming into play or other factors affecting supply curve, then it may be possible that there is supply curve which shifts without change in price. So it may not be entirely upward sloping supply curve. It may be downward sloping, it may be flat, it may be straight, it may be anything. So I'll make you understand all the variables in the next two lessons about what is affecting supply curve and in what manner. So this lesson is presented by me, Ayush Thangi. A little detail about me. Passionate about teaching, that this you may have understood by now. Taught at most reputed civil services institute. Students who have studied from me, they would know where I teach. CA, lawyer. Follow me on this link of unacademy.in/user/Ayush Sanghi. Please hit the contribute button if you like the lessons. It will keep us motivated to make more and more lessons, to provide more quality content, to get more educators, and as regular people to run the organization. So if you're really liking the lesson, please hit the contribute button. It's a request more than any kind of. So it's only an exchange of the services which I'm providing, and it's voluntary, purely voluntary, whatever you wish to donate or whatever you wish to contribute. So let me make you understand what the variables are that affect the supply curve. Variables affecting supply curve, we understood about the shift in supply curve in the last lesson. Through this lesson, we will understand the important variables that shift the supply curve are as follows, just as we understood shift in demand curve. So shift in demand curve was on the basis of all those factors which were earlier held constant, and now we had started considering similarly supply curve. All those factors which were held constant, now those factors would be considered. The first factor being the input prices or the prices of input. Input means raw material. So the ultimate selling price is the same, and the input prices or the raw material prices, it reduces. So let me make you understand this input price example through the point of view of cake baking. In order to produce the output of a cake, bakers use various inputs. They use cream, sugar, flavors, cake machines, infrastructure in which the cake is made, labor of workers to mix the ingredients and operate the machines. So all these are inputs, or you can say all these are raw materials which are used in order to prepare a cake. All these raw materials command a price. Hence, that price is known as input prices from the point of view of raw material. When we have various forms of input prices, all those input prices need to be contributed, or all those input prices need to be separately understood from the point of view of price. So if you are selling a cake at X, and whatever your input prices are 0.8x, so you are making a profit of 0.2x. But what if the input prices reduce, let's say from 0.8 to 0.7, then you are making a profit of 0.3. Hence the input prices, but selling at the same price, would shift your supply curve to the right. You would start producing more because your input cost is less. So when the price of any of these input increases, producing cake is less profitable because you will be left with less margin, and businesses supply less cake. So profit is computed on the basis of ultimate selling price. You can easily presume that the ultimate selling price is the same, which I took to be X. So in my example, if we take the cake price as X, then the input price, if it increases from 0.8x to 0.9x, then automatically I'm less with less profit. So it would reduce my motivation to supply more. Hence my supply curve would shift to the right. And if input prices rise substantially, firm might shut down and supply no cake at all. Thus the supply of a good is negatively related to the price of the inputs used to make and supply the good. This is considered to be input prices. Now, the second factor or the second variable is considered to be technology. Very, very important. How does technology help? Why does or what does technology lead to? Technology used for turning inputs into cake is another determinant of supply. Yes, very much. So, if I was using no technology, everything was done manually, maybe my cost was higher. The invention of the mechanized cake making process machine entailed a cost. So, it entailed a cost where I purchased the mechanized machine. So, for example, mechanization reduced the amount of labor necessary to make cakes. By reducing firms' cost in terms of mechanization or the advancement of technology, raise the supply of cake. Hence, technology would also affect supply. My supply curve would shift to the right if the technology I use or if the technology that is considered is very, very good. So, it reduces my other cost. It reduces my cost of labor. It reduces my cost of administration. It reduces my cost of various operational things. Hence, we can also say that technology has helped, or technology also considers as an important variable affecting the supply curve, whether to the left or to the right. The third factor is expectation, the third variable. Now, let me make you understand expectation is something of the future. So, I might supply more thinking that in future the prices will go down. So, this can be understood from the point of view of something that is happening or that will happen in future. For example, petrol pumps. Petrol pumps, if the price of the petrol is about to rise with effect from midnight, 12 o'clock, then the entire day petrol pumps, most of the petrol pumps, people would shut down the petrol pumps because selling the petrol right now is less profitable. After the prices increase, then they will sell petrol. That will be on the basis of expectation that the price is rising. So, amount of cakes a business supplies today may depend on its expectations for the future. During Christmas, plum cake is required heavily. Hence, a business would expect to increase the supply due to an occasion. If a business expects the prices of the cake to rise in the future, it will put some of its current production into storage and supply less to the market today and sell more at a higher price at a future date. This is simply on the basis of expectation that on the basis of the occasion, they will command a higher price for the same good for which they are commanding lesser price today. So, this would consider or this would be included in the important variable affecting supply curve. Coming to the fourth variable, it is number of sellers. How many sellers are producing the good? Is it a heavily competitive market? Is it a less competitive market? So supply in the market depends on factors that influence the supply of individual sellers, such as price of inputs used to produce the good. What is the price of inputs used to produce the good? What is the technology available to produce the good? And what are the expectations? These were the variables that we have understood so far. All these factors we have understood so far is considered or should be based on the price that the sellers are willing to command or that the buyers are willing to pay. That would depend on the number of sellers. You may have seen in a sabzi market or in a vegetable market, आप दे दो नहीं तो हम कहीं और से ले लेंगे. That is considered to be number of sellers. That either I'll buy from you or I'll buy from someone else. You give it as per what rate I command. So, in this very case, the number of sellers, in addition, the supply in market also depends on the number of sellers. If we have too many sellers in a market, it is a heavily competitive market. In that case, the sellers may not be able to command a higher price always. But on the other hand, sellers may be able to command a higher price always, considered that how many sellers can produce that same good. So if producers of cake were to stop producing and retire from the cake business, the supply in the market would fall. This is the most important point. Producers of cake were to stop producing and retire from the cake business, which means that the number of sellers decrease and they are no longer producing. Hence, it would shift the supply curve to the left as the market supply would fall. On the other hand, if producers were to produce more, in that case, there would be heavy demand, number of sellers would be high. Hence, the number of sellers have a huge impact in considering the variables. So I would be coming out with more of such awesome lessons on the supply. I hope you are liking these lessons because we are spending a lot of effort in making the slides and developing content. These lessons lessons are purely in English medium, please let me know if you need the lessons in Hindi medium as well. And secondly, please hit the contribute button if you are really liking the lessons, if this is contributing towards your preparation. I promise that this would be more than sufficient for the static portion that you are studying, because you would no longer need to study from any other source. Thank you very much. Bye. God bless. Hey guys, what's up? I'm back with my Introduction to Indian Economy series, part 1.9. So, we were discussing supply. We discussed about the definition of supply, law of supply, shift in supply curve, and then we discussed about variables affecting the supply curve. This lesson is in continuation to whatever we have understood, and this gives us the exceptions to the law of supply. What are the exceptions? Which means, what are those things or those factors which do not adhere to the law of supply that we have understood? So, adherence to the law of supply is important, where we have a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. But certainly, there are some factors that do not adhere to this relationship. What are those factors? What is referred to within this lesson? We would understand. But before that, I'd just like to give you some insight about myself and the contribution mode. Please contribute to these lessons. Hit the contribute button which is below beneath the video. Leave a comment, leave a remark. How would you like us to improve? And please contribute if you're really liking the lessons. So you can follow me on the link http:// unacademy/user/Ayush Sanghi. So I'll continue with my lesson to the exceptions to the law of supply. This is the link that you have to follow me on. Please contribute if you are really liking the lessons. It would keep our spirits high if you keep on contributing. So just like exceptional cases to law of demand, we also have some exceptions in the case of supply, as we have understood in the demand case. Now we would understand in the supply case. Let's assume, what if there is decrease in quantity supplied with rise in price and vice versa? Now this is an inverse relationship which is not possible in case of law of supply, because law of supply says that increase in price would lead to increase in quantity supplied. But here we are saying that there is decrease in quantity supplied with rise in price and vice versa. This means it is absolutely opposite to what we have studied in case if law of supply. Such situations are called as exceptions to the law of supply because they go against this law. So what are such exceptions? What have they led to from the point of view of seller? Why are such things or such factors existing, and why do they confuse us regarding the normal concept of supply, what we have studied in terms of direct relationship between price and quantity supplied? Let's understand each of those factors or each of those exceptions in proper detail. First exceptions being expectations of future prices. Now this is from seller's point of view. Obviously, because we are studying supply, so it has to be from seller's point of view. Expectations of future prices. If one is expecting that the future prices may decrease or the future prices may increase, accordingly a supplier behavior may change. So this is opposite to consumer behavior. Just like a consumer behavior changes on the basis of expectation of prices, similarly a supplier's behavior also changes from the point of view of future prices. So in case the sellers have an expectation of the prices to rise in future, they adopt wait and watch policy and stop their supply of goods. So right now they would not be supplying as much, where they would be supplying much of goods when the price of the good rises, or when the price of, you can say, the seller or the future prices increase. So this is the expectation of the prices. Whatever the price may be, presently producers may want to supply the goods when the prices rise even more, which would get them good returns. So in future, if they are getting good returns, they would stop the production right now and they would only produce in future. Or if the expectation is that the future prices would decrease or the future prices might not be good, so they would like to supply more and more, or they would like to supply more right now and finish off the stock so that they don't sell at losses at a future date. On the contrary, if sellers expect the prices to fall in the future, then they would sell off their goods at existing lower prices in order to avoid losses. They would finish off their stock right now in order to avoid losses. This is considered to be expectation of future prices. You may notice such kind of example in case of woolens. So woolens are sold maximum in cold. When the cold ends, the woolens are sold at a very low price, because they very well know that in summers nobody is going to buy woolens. So woolens have the highest demand and they have the highest supply in case of winters, because at that time they are demanded hugely. That is considered to be expectations of future prices. So this is the first exception to the rule of law of supply. In this case, we may get a supply curve which is not upward sloping entirely. Coming to the second exception, weather dependent produce from farms. weather dependent, something that is dependent upon weather. So if the weather is good, they would like to produce more. If the weather is bad, obviously they can't produce more because the weather doesn't support them. So in case of products from the farms, weather plays a very, very important role. Such products may not obey the law of supply as they may not react to changes in prices due to heavy dependency on weather conditions. So let me make you understand, if the weather conditions, as you see, they are not conducive, or if the weather conditions are not good, then in that case all the crops which are growing or which are expected to grow, they would not be grown, or they would not be grown in as much quantity as are required. So in this case the farmers would not be able to produce as the weather doesn't support them. On the other hand, if the weather is very, very friendly to the farmer, then they would have more than good produce that they would like to produce in future. So it's weather dependent produce from farms. It is an exception to the supply curve. The third kind of, or the third point is perishable commodities from seller's point of view. Perishable commodities are those which get rotten or which perish in a small period of time, like food items. So commodities are of different types, like long-lived and short-lived, durable and non-durable goods. Not all goods can be stored for a long period of time. Hence, what we have, certain commodities have very short shelf life and they need to be made available in the market before they perish. Food items. Example, fruits, sea produce, flowers, meat, vegetables, etc. All these are perishable items, they are short lived. So they need to be made available in the market at a faster rate and much before they can perish. Hence, for such goods, the sellers cannot simply wait for a longer time and supply the commodities in the market even when the prices are unchanged. So, if the prices are not changed, then in that case, you can simply say that the sellers would be producing, or they would be supplying it in the market on the very date because it is a perishable commodity. But if the prices are changing, then you can simply say that they would be supplying, or they have not much choice to supply because it's a perishable commodity. So let's say the price changes after 1 week, and if they have produced today, they have to sell it within 2 days, otherwise it will perish. They cannot wait for 1 week to keep that entire thing with them so that in the anticipation of prices they would earn higher profits. That cannot simply happen. So in case of perishable commodities, we have to simply sell the entire stock ASAP, because in that case you would not be able to store the good for a longer period of time. So I hope you are understanding this as an exception of law of supply. Next, coming to fashionista. I hope you can remember discussing fashionista. I discussing fashionista in case of demand. Now from the supplier's point of view, when you sell goods which are in fashion, then the sellers command a higher price. Obviously, something which is in fashion, they would command a higher price. On the other hand, there are certain goods they go out of fashion and are no longer in demand. Such goods are supplied by the sellers at low prices in order to clear these goods. So in that case, it also depends whether the good is in fashion or not. It needs to be in fashion. Next, coming to economic slowdown from the point of view of seller. Economic slowdown may refer to many things. It may refer to slowdown, it may refer to recession, it may refer to depression. So businesses passes through different economic phases like these: slowdown, recession, depression. Hence sellers have to adapt to these changes accordingly. How do sellers adapt? During the low economic phases, the sellers may not have or may not produce, or may not have the advantage of high prices, and hence during such tough times, goods are sold even when they are sold at lower than their cost, because they know that the economy is in a slowdown phase. People would not be able to afford to pay much on this basis. Hence, they would not be curtailing their produce, because they know that simply they cannot command a higher price as people won't be willing to pay, or people won't be able to pay. Hence, the law of supply would not be applicable in this case. This is an exception. So, slowdown, a much rigorous form is recession, and then comes depression. In a depressionary phase, you may have to come up with certain goods where you are not able to command any kind of price. So, in that case, so depressionary phase would see something like this working in case of selling it at a lower cost. From seller's point of view, modification or change in business, if the business changes or modifies in future, seller can plan to diversify and enter into an entirely new segment of business by exiting or continuing the present one. In case the present business is on the verge of close down, the seller sells the goods at lower prices simply to clear the existing stock. This happens with many businesses which are in the phase of closing down. Hence, in that case, this becomes an exception to law of supply, because you don't wait for the prices to rise. You sell at whatever price you are getting. Requirement of money or funds. If the seller requires more money and funds, in that case he would be willing to sell at a lower cost. In case of cash crunch situation, the seller may face a time when he is immediate need of funds. So he would not wait for the prices to rise. He would sell immediately at whatever price he is getting or a lesser price that he is getting from the point of view of requirement of money or funds. In such a situation, he may supply the goods in the market even at lower prices. And the last point is supply of labor. If the labor is willing to work, the firm will get the maximum benefit out of them. The workers are interested in high wages till a certain point only. Once this point is achieved, they may likely to devote their time to other leisure activities. Hence, you may not get a adequate supply of labor all the time. This means that initially the supply of labor is directly related to the wages, but after a certain level, the relation between wages and supply becomes inversely related. Money is important only a certain extent, and labor want to enjoy. I hope you are liking the lessons. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? So I hope you're liking the lessons on Introduction to Indian Economy. Whatever we are discussing through this lesson or through this collection, let me assure you that whatever you are reading, that is more than sufficient from the point of view of UPSC prelim exam on conceptual basis for demand and supply. So I hope you understand and I hope you are liking the lessons. Please contribute voluntarily whatever you like, whatever you feel like contributing towards this initiative through by clicking the contributing button below my lesson. So this is a little detail about me. Follow me on this link of unacademy.in/user/Ayush Sanghi for more of such awesome lessons. Now coming to this point, in this video we will be understanding how does equilibrium come into play. So far we've understood about supply, demand, concepts of supply, law of demand, law of supply, etc. Now what will happen is that whatever the person would like to purchase, let's say suppose I am a buyer, I would like to purchase at what price? At the least price. So buyer's contribution or buyer's, you can say, motivation lies on the least price. On the other hand, seller's motivation lies in producing at the highest possible price. Buyer wants the lowest price, seller wants the highest price. So how do we work out a simple point where the buyer would be willing to buy and the seller would be willing to sell? How do we come to that price? Here comes the concept of point of equilibrium. So discussion on point of equilibrium starts where we are confused between the demand and supply prices. So the market supply curve and the market demand curve are taken together on the same figure. I hope you remember the figures which we had drawn for demand and supply. So please refer to my earlier lessons from the point of view of demand and supply. Wherever market demand and supply curve will intersect, which means that if we take them on the very same figure, wherever they will intersect, that point will be considered to be the market equilibrium point or EM. The price at this intersection is called the equilibrium price and the quantity is known as equilibrium quantity. Now let us depict it through the point of view of diagram. This is the point of equilibrium. So if we take the point of equilibrium, here we have the downward sloping demand curve as we had understood in our demand concept, and we have an upward sloping supply curve, what we had understood in the supply concept. We had taken both curves on separate diagrams as we had understood separate concepts separately. Now if we take both the curves on the very same diagram, we would have to reach at the point of equilibrium. I'll explain it to you how. In a downward sloping demand curve, this is the price, y-axis, so price is the lowest. A buyer would like to purchase at this price and he would purchase the maximum quantity at this particular price. On the other hand, this price, the seller would be willing to produce only this much quantity, which is the least quantity. On the other hand, the buyer would not be willing to pay price for this would not be willing to pay this higher price for this quantity. So at this higher price, he would purchase only this much quantity. On the other hand, a supplier would be willing to supply the maximum at this price, which is the highest price, he is producing maximum. Supplier wants to produce this at this price. Buyer wants to pay this price. So in this case, how do we reach at a particular point of equilibrium? These are four separate corners. In order to come at specific conclusion, we draw the point of equilibrium where demand and supply curves intersect. So this is the entire explanation to the diagram. Wherever they intersect, that is considered to be the point of equilibrium. Hence, the analogy that can be drawn is that equilibrium needs to be understood from the point of view of market equilibrium. This is the market equilibrium where supply and demand curve intersect. So at this particular price, the buyer would be willing to purchase and the supplier would be willing to supply. Hence, this price is known as equilibrium price. A buyer would be willing to purchase this much at this price at this much quantity. On the other hand, supplier would be willing to supply this much at this particular price. Hence, this is known as equilibrium quantity. So, equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, market equilibrium, these are the concepts which come on on the concept of demand and supply. So, what is equilibrium price? EP, or you can say equilibrium price, refers to the quantity of the good that buyers are willing and able to buy exactly balances the quantity that sellers are willing and able to sell. So then only we come at the point of equilibrium or the point equal. The EP is also referred to as market clearing price because at this price everyone in the market is willing to buy or sell. Hence, it is considered to be a market clearing price, not a very important nomenclature, but just for knowledge. Buyers have bought all they want to buy and sellers have sold all they want to sell. The actions of buyers and sellers naturally move markets towards the equilibrium of supply and demand. So having understood this diagram, we come to know that buyers and suppliers, they go through this curve where they intersect at this point where each one is willing to demand and supply the same quantity. Now, let's take two separate cases. Let's say the case where excess supply or surplus. So, let's say in the diagram that market price is above the equilibrium price as in the given diagram. So, the given diagram is this. Equilibrium point is this what we had achieved, where the downward sloping demand curve and the upward sloping supply curve intersect. So this is a point of surplus. Surplus would come only when the supplier is producing more, but the people who are demanding, they are not demanding as much. Hence, there would be a surplus supply. So this is the first case, excess supply or surplus. It is considered to be a surplus of the good. Suppliers are unable to sell all they want at the current price. They are not able to sell all they want at the current price, reason being that the prices are not acceptable to the buyer. A supplier is sometimes called a situation of excess supply, and suppliers respond to the surplus by reducing their prices. So unless until the suppliers reduce their prices, the entire stock of the surplus would not be demanded. Hence, they would have to reduce price from here to here, and buyers would increase their purchasing capacity from here to here. So automatically, it would result into payment for goods what they need to purchase. Looking at the fall in prices, the quantity demanded will increase, but the quantity supply would decrease. Reason being, quantity demanded is increasing because the price is reducing, quantity supplied is decreasing because the price is reducing, and suppliers want an increased price. So prices would continue to fall until the market reaches the equilibrium. Hence, when it reaches the equilibrium, this is the price at which buyers would be willing to pay for this good and suppliers would be willing to charge for this good. Hence, equilibrium point. Suppliers would not be willing to purchase suppliers would not be willing to supply at a point lower than this. Hence, in this case, we are at case number 1, equilibrium point. Coming to the second case, less supply or shortage. In this particular case, we have the opposite of surplus. So we have shortage over here. In this case, there is a downward sloping supply curve where suppliers are not supplying as much as quantity is demanded. Demand is extremely high, it is the maximum. Reason being that it is the cheapest good or good at the lowest price. On the other hand, supply is not as much, reason being that it is the lowest price. Suppliers don't have the motivation to supply large. Hence, this situation is considered to be shortage. Wherever there is shortage, suppliers are not producing as much. So case number 2 talks about less supply or shortage. On the other hand, let's say that market price is below the equilibrium price, as in the diagram. There is a less of that good. People who demand are unable to buy what they want at the current price. Reason being that they are offering very low prices, what is not acceptable to the supplier. This is a case of shortage. A shortage is also called a situation of excess demand, which is not fulfilled by the suppliers. Reason may be suppliers are not getting adequate prices for their produce. Obviously, suppliers are getting the least price, they would not be motivated to produce more. So in this case, too many buyers chase too few goods. To too many buyers, because they create high demand, they are chasing too few goods because there is shortage. So the suppliers have to increase their paying capacity and suppliers would automatically reach to the point of equilibrium. Hence, in this case, sellers can respond to the shortage by raising their prices without losing sales. As the price rises, the quantity demanded falls and the quantity supplied rises, and the market once again moves towards the point of equilibrium. Hence, the activities of many buyers and sellers automatically push the market price towards the equilibrium price. So, whether you are at the surplus situation, it would automatically be dragged down to the equilibrium price, as buyers would not be paying this higher price. On the other hand, if the demand is huge but the prices are too low offered by the buyers, in this case, this demand or this particular price would be pulled up by this equilibrium point. Reason being that suppliers would not be willing to supply at this particular point. When the suppliers are not willing to supply, the people who are demanding, they're not willing to demand, then you need to reach a common point, and this common point happens to be the point of equilibrium called as market equilibrium. Please remember, the price at equilibrium is known as equilibrium price and demand is known as equilibrium quantity demanded or equilibrium quantity just. This is considered to be the concept of equilibrium, extremely crucial from the point of view of understanding demand and supply. I hope you are liking the lessons. I'll be coming out with more of such awesome lessons in this very series. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. God bless. Hey guys, what's up? Introduction to Indian Economy 1.11. So far, we have understood so many concepts except for one. I'm amazed you haven't written to me on the point of view of elasticity. Nevertheless, I'll explain it to you because this is a part of the syllabus, understanding the concept of elasticity of demand. So, when we understand demand, an important component comes into play, that what is elasticity of demand, or what do we refer to, or what do we refer by elasticity. So this lesson is presented by me, Ayush Sanghi. I'll make you understand the concept of elasticity. Before that, some details about me, and please follow me on this username for more of such awesome lessons. I'm making this for UPSC preparation people, but many other candidates or students, whoever wants to appear for any other government exam and learn demand and supply, or even the concept of demand and supply can be learned through these lessons. It is no different, it is applicable for every single person. And please contribute wholeheartedly, voluntarily if you are liking these lessons. It would really be appreciated, it would keep our spirits extremely high. Now, coming to the concept of elasticity of demand. According to the law of demand, a fall in the price of good raises its quantity demanded. This is a very understood concept, that there is inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. From this concept, let's understand the concept of elasticity. So, elasticity or the price elasticity of demand measures the response of change in quantity demanded to change in price. Response of change. So, when we need to see the response of change, elasticity refers to this response. By response, I mean that quantity demanded changes, or any kind of change in price, how much quantity demanded it changes. Let's say the price of Coca Cola, when it was 10 rupees, I used to consume 2 bottles. Now it falls to from 10 rupees to 6 rupees. Would I start consuming more number of bottles? Will I start consuming 4 bottles or 5 bottles? It needs to depend. So we calculate the response of change. So if the price of the Coca-Cola bottle is halved, let's say it becomes 5, would I double my consumption? Is considered to be response to demand. That is the concept of elasticity of demand. So the formula for calculation of elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So we need to change the quantity demanded and we also need to change the price. And we have to see that what is greater, numerator greater than denominator. If the numerator is greater than denominator, then elasticity of demand is considered to be greater than 1. So the type of good is known as a highly elastic good or an elastic good. On the contrary, if the denominator is higher than the numerator, it would be considered to be elasticity of demand less than 1, an inelastic good. So, as per the law of demand, the price elasticity of demand is always negative, as price and quantity demanded move in opposite directions. This was understood in law of demand. But demand for a good is said to be elastic if the quantity demanded responds substantially to changes in the price. So if the price, let's say, reduces by 1 rupee, but I increase my consumption by more than double, so in that case, it would be numerator higher than denominator and elasticity being greater than 1. If the elasticity is greater than 1, then automatically we can presume that it is a demand of, or it is an example of elastic good. So demand is said to be inelastic if the quantity demanded responds only slightly to changes in the price. So please remember, if the quantity demanded is changing slightly to change in price, slightly means less than change in price, it would be less than 1. If it is changing more or substantially, it would be more than 1. So the conclusion behind elasticity of demand as a concept is elastic demand or any demand would be considered to be elastic only when the numerator is greater than denominator. So demand for a good is considered to be elastic if the quantity demanded responds substantially, which means that it responds more than change in price, or it just accepts to change more than or higher than the change in price. Substantial means more. That is considered to be the example of elastic demand. On the other hand, inelastic demand is said to be inelastic if the quantity demanded responds slightly to change in the price. Slightly means very small, too few change in the price. So the demand is changing, but it is changing at a slower rate or in a slower percentage as compared to the change in price. So if it is changing at a lesser rate, which means that the numerator is higher than the denominator, in that case, elasticity of demand would be less than 1, and such type of good would be considered to be inelastic. So remember the words slightly and substantially. Substantially means more. When numerator is higher than denominator. Numerator being higher than denominator, it can easily be understood that ED is greater than 1. It's an example of elastic good. Going further, we come to know about how willing consumers are to move away from the good as its price rises. So many people or many consumers have a habit of obviously moving away if the price is rising. So increase in prices, it does what? It also moves away the buyers or it demotivates the buyers to buy more. So the price elasticity of demand for any good measures the consumer behavior. How does it measure the consumer behavior? That people move away before buying that product. So, in this very case, let me explain it to you. Thus, the elasticity reflects the many factors such as economic factors, sociological factors or social factors, psychological factors that shape consumer taste. Economic factors means money, social factors means society, whether society is making you accept that good or not. Psychological factors means how your psychology is reacting to a change in price. If the price is changing to a great high extent, then in that case your psychology may not allow it. If it is changing only a little much or high, it becomes higher only a little much, then psychological factors would come into play. So these all things, they shape the consumer taste. On this very basis, we understand that what determines the price elasticity of demand. So, what is determining the price elasticity of demand? There are certain factors that determine this demand. In this segment, we would discuss each of those in order to understand how price elasticity of demand is affected. So, how is it affected? Let's understand. First is due to availability of substitutes, what we know as substitute goods. So if we have a closer substitute, then the price of one good, if it rises, its consumers would fall and the consumers would shift to the price of the substitute. So goods with substitutes tend to have more elastic demand because it is easier for consumer to switch from that good to others. So it has an elastic demand. Tea and coffee are close substitutes of each other. Hence, if the prices of tea falls, automatically people who were consuming tea, they shift to coffee and vice versa. A small increase in the price of tea, assuming the price of coffee is held constant, causes the quantity of tea sold to fall by a large amount because its price has increases. So in this case, the consumer behavior is not very accepting of increase in prices of any good, and they would shift to some other good if the price increases, or let's say vice versa, price decreases due to availability of substitutes. So this is our first logic. Second, necessity goods versus luxury goods or against luxury goods. Necessity goods would be purchased even in the times of difficulty, even in the times of cash crunch, even when you don't have money. So necessities have inelastic demand as against luxuries which have elastic demand. Let me make you understand about necessity. When the price of a visit to a doctor increases, people will not alter the number of times they go to the doctor. Obviously, you have to go to the doctor because you have to get yourself treated. This is considered to be a necessity good. On the other hand, when the price of LED rises, the quantity of LEDs demanded falls substantially. The reason being that it's a luxury good. We can simply defer its purchase. We can defer its purchase by 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever number of time. It's a material good. The reason is that most people view doctor visits as a necessity and LED as a luxury. So आपने देखा, मैंने आपको यही समझाया था. Whether a good is a necessity or a luxury depends not on the properties of the good but on the preference of the buyer. So it's buyer preference that would increase or that would result into luxury goods that are being understood. Now the third factor is forthcoming time horizon, that we are specifically anticipating the prices, and on the basis of those prices we will react. So goods tend to have more elastic demand over longer time horizons. When the price of fuel increases, the quantity of fuel demanded falls only a little. So people prefer alternatives, buying more fuel efficient cars, that's a future time horizon, switching to public transportation, forthcoming time horizon, shifting closer to workplace, they may even shift to closer to workplace, that is also forthcoming time horizon. So within some time the quantity of petrol demanded falls, which leads to fall in prices. So in this case, one is affecting the demand of the other. So if the crude oil price increases, then people take up alternatives, and on the contrary, what happens is the quantity of petrol demanded falls, which is why the people who are supplying petrol, they are bound to reduce the prices of the petrol in that particular country. So these are the three factors: forthcoming time horizon, necessity goods versus luxury goods, and availability of substitutes, through which we understand what determines the price elasticity of demand. I hope you like the lesson. Please keep writing to me. Please contribute on the button there, which is below the video. Thank you very much. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? So, Introduction to Indian Economy, Part 12, 1.12. This lesson we'll understand elasticity of supply. So, already I've made you understand what supply is, how supply works, what is the law of supply, how does equilibrium in supply curve work with respect to demand. We have understood almost all concepts pertaining to supply. But we are left with one single concept, that is elasticity of supply. So let me make you understand what elasticity of supply means. But before that, a little intro. Ayush Sanghi, please follow me on this Unacademy channel, this link of Unacademy. There is a contribute button, hit the contribute button, that would result into some kind of revenues for us and keep us motivated to provide more quality awesome lessons to you. Right? So let me continue with the elasticity concept of supply. So this is the opposite of demand. If you remember, we had understood certain things in demand. The opposite is in the case of supply. Higher the price, higher would be the quantity supplied. Look at it from the supplier point of view. In demand, there used to be an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. But in case of supply, there is direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. So higher the price, higher would be the quantity supplied is the elasticity concept. Price elasticity of supply can be defined as degree of responsiveness of quantity supplied to a change in price. I repeat, degree of responsiveness. So this term which they have given, elasticity means response. So responsiveness. When we calculate the degree of responsiveness of quantity supplied to a change in price or quantity supplied change divided by a change in price, it gives us elasticity of supply. So it simply means how much change in price would lead to change in quantity supplied, or whatever change in price would lead to how much change in quantity supplied. So let's say the price or the price of supply, it increases from rupees 10 to rupees 12. At 10 rupees I was producing 100 units. At 12 rupees I would like to produce 120 units or maybe 140 units. If I produce 140 units at 12 rupees, it says that my quantity supplied has changed to a change in price. So we need to calculate the degree of responsiveness from the point of view of quantity supplied to a change in price. So the formula used for understanding elasticity is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. Percentage change in quantity supplied means the new quantity minus the old quantity divided by the old quantity, whole divided by change in price, new price minus old price divided by the old price. This would give us the elasticity of supply on the basis of new price or new quantity supplied. So, on this very basis, we can draw the conclusion as follows. If supply can be considered to be elastic, supply for a good is said to be elastic if the quantity supplied responds substantially to change in the price. So, quantity supplied responds substantially to a change in price means that if it responds more than or greater than what price has changed. So, in my earlier example, let's say the price changes by 2 rupees from 10 to 12. At 10 rupees, I was producing 100 units. So, at 12 rupees, do I produce 120 units? If I produce 120 units, the numerator would be equal to the denominator, which means change in quantity demanded to a change in quantity supplied or change in price. Both are the same. Hence, numerator would be equal to the denominator. On the other hand, change in quantity supplied numerator, if it rises to 140 units, so change in numerator or change in quantity supplied is more as compared to denominator change in price. Hence, such kind of supply can be considered to be elastic supply. On the other hand, inelastic supply is said to be inelastic if the quantity supplied responds to a smaller extent, which means numerator has responded to a smaller extent as compared to denominator. So on this very thing, if the percentage change in price is more as compared to percentage change in quantity supplied, so at 10 rupees I was producing or I was supplying 100 units, at 12 rupees I start supplying 110 units. So that is change is less, numerator is less than denominator. In that case, the supply is considered to be inelastic. So we get two types of supply concepts, elastic and inelastic concepts. So I hope you are understanding the concept of elasticity of supply. Let me make you understand in more detail from the point of view of a case study. So, what are the factors affecting the elasticity of supply? First, being the most important factor is that price elasticity of supply depends on the flexibility of sellers to change the quantity of the good they produce. So, what is the flexibility of the sellers? How many sellers and how flexible are they to change the quantity of the good they produce? For example, natural areas like mountains have an inelastic supply because it is almost impossible to produce more of it. So, it is inelastic. Quantity supplied cannot increase. On the other hand, manufactured goods such as books, cars, and TVs have elastic supplies because businesses that produce them can produce more if they are getting higher price. So, if the numerator can increase, which means change in quantity supplied can increase, and that too at a higher rate as compared to the denominator change in price, it is considered to be elastic. On the other hand, mountains or natural resources, we cannot increase the number of mountains, hence, numerator would be smaller than denominator, it would be inelastic. So this is the most important factor from the point of view of elasticity, change the quantity of the good they produce. Other factors are factors affecting elasticity of supply. First being the second factor is in determination of price elasticity of supply is a time period being considered. What is a time period? Supply is more elastic in the long run. It is more elastic in the long run means it has to be or it has to change in elasticity terms in the long run. On the other hand, in short period of time, firms cannot easily change the size of their factories to make more or less of a good. Hence, thus in the short run, the quantity supplied is not very responsive to the price. It is not very responsive, but it is definitely responsive. Hence, it is inelastic. So, it is inelastic because it is responsive, but not as responsive as the denominator. By contrast, over long periods of time, firms can build new factories or close old ones. And so in that case, it is a time period. If you close the old ones and open a new factory, it would take a long period of time. In addition, new firms can enter the market and old firms can shut down. Thus, in the long run, the quantity supplied can respond substantially to price changes. Hence, it can be considered to be elastic. So, elasticity or non elasticity or inelasticity depends upon these factors that affect the supply curve. Now, let me make you understand the case study of elasticity of supply. During 1970s, members of OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, decided to increase the world price of oil to increase their incomes. So they decided to increase the price of oil because they were the only countries that had oil. These countries accomplished this goal by jointly reducing the amount of oil they supplied. So first they reduced the oil that they supplied during 73 to 74. The price of oil adjusted for inflation increased by more than 50%. If we adjust it for inflation of today, it increased by more than 50%. During 79 to 81, the price of oil approximately doubled. If we adjust it according to inflation price of 2004, the price of crude oil reached $91 per barrel. It is an alarming situation. But during 82 to 85, the price of oil steadily declined by about 10%. Mark it important. 10% से decline करने लगा. OPEC countries facing huge dissatisfaction during this period. So in 86, cooperation among OPEC members completely broke down and the price of oil plunged 45%. So when the OPEC was together, they used to increase prices and they were as a company increasing the prices. But when they faced a little roadblock by decline in prices by 10%, they broke up and it took a plunge of 45%. In 1990, the price of oil, adjusted for inflation, was back to where it started in 70 and stayed at that low level throughout most of the 90s. In the beginning of 2000s, the price of oil rose again due to increased demand and rapidly growing Chinese economy, but it did not approach the levels of 1981. So this is considered to be normal growth due to a factor like the Chinese economy. On the other hand, it doesn't grow in normal situations where they get together and try to grow because there are disputes within. That is artificially grown case. So this opaque case study of 70s and 80s shows how supply and demand can behave differently in the short run and in the long run. Short run may it can behave differently as both the supply and demand for oil is relatively inelastic. In short run, supply is inelastic due to the quantity of oil reserves known and the capacity for drilling oil cannot be changed in short period of time. So it is also inelastic, hence quantity of supply cannot increase, numerator will be less than denominator. Demand is inelastic as buying habits do not respond immediately to change in price. Very, very important. Demand is inelastic, reason being that buying habits do not respond immediately to change in price. Hence, if the price reduces, it would not result into excessive increase. If the price increases, it would not result into excessive increase in supply because there would be no demand. So this is a case study in order to understand what the concept of elasticity is. I hope you are liking the lessons. I'll be coming out with more of such awesome lessons. Thank you very much. God bless you. Bye. Hey guys, what's up? So I'm back with my lesson on Introduction to Indian Economy, part 1.13. What are the various types of market? Presented by me, Ayush Sanghi. So earlier 12 lessons were focusing upon every single aspect of demand supply, what is demand, what is supply, elasticity, law of demand, shift, movement, etc. We would continue with the types of market in this lesson. So this would be the last lesson of the series under this collection. About me, I'm passionate about teaching, taught at most reputed civil services institutes. Follow me on this Unacademy channel for more of such lessons. So let us start with types of competitions or types of factors markets. But before that, understanding what are various competition or what is a competition. What does competition actually mean? Competition can be defined as one where sellers of the same commodity compete for the same buyers. So, when the sellers are competing for the similar buyers or same buyers, it can be said that sellers are competing against each other or the sellers are in competition. Such kind of market is known as a competitive marketable situation. So, what are the various types of competition? Perfectly competitive market, monopoly, and imperfect markets. There are three types of competition. First is perfectly competitive market, second is monopoly, and third is imperfect market. So, we'll understand all three with help of various and many examples from the point of view of competition. First, starting with perfectly competitive market. So, what is meant by perfectly competitive market? How is perfectly competitive market unique or understanding in terms of competition? So, when we say perfect, the word perfect, it is attached with competition. Competition, as we are understood last, perfect competition means that the competition between sellers is perfect. It is not on the basis of monopoly or decisiveness on the basis of sellers. It is perfect competition. So, a perfectly competitive market is necessarily one that has the following characteristics. Very, very important. Hence, every single market which has these characteristics is considered to be a perfectly competitive market. First is multiple buyers and many sellers in the market. There are multiple buyers and sellers in the market. Such kind of market is known as a perfectly competitive market. Second is goods offered by the various sellers are largely the same because it is considered to be competition. Same goods are offered to the same buyers, hence they are competing for the same customers. And there is free entry or exit to firms in the market. Free entry, free exit to the firms in the market. So these are three characteristics on the basis of which we decide a perfectly competitive market. Multiple buyers and multiple sellers, goods offered by the various sellers, and free entry or exit to the firms in the market. If three characteristics are being met, it is considered to be a perfectly competitive market. Hence, with what we can define is, according to the above mentioned attributes, the actions of any single buyer or seller in the market have a negligible impact on the market price. Why they have a negligible impact on the market price? Because nobody is a price maker. All of these sellers who are operating in the market, they are price takers. They would take the price on their personal basis. It is considered to be a perfectly competitive market. So each buyer and seller takes the price as regulated by the market. Whatever market regulates, the market forces on the basis of demand and supply, that price would be determined, and that particular price would be taken by the seller on the basis of perfectly competitive market. Hence, the first type of market situation that we have understood is a perfectly competitive market. So, what is so unique about it? Uniqueness is that nobody would be able to determine the price ever. It would be the market force. Hence, in a perfectly competitive market, it is often said there would be no exploitation of the consumer, as consumer can buy from any place else wherever it is finding its price suitable, or wherever it is taking its price which is suitable or affordable to the consumer. Now, coming to the second part, the second type of market, monopoly. What is monopoly? So, you have heard of this term before, but I would make you understand this term on a different basis this time through the help of an example. Monopoly. Mono means single. So, when there is a single seller in the market, it is considered to be a monopoly. And that monopoly leads to a single seller producing the good in very high prices. So let's presume that you own a laptop or a PC. It probably uses a version of Windows. So most of you, all of us, normally use the Windows, the operating system developed by Microsoft. When Microsoft first designed Windows many years ago, it applied for and received a copyright from the government. So Microsoft applied for Windows, it received a copyright. Now you already know the concept of copyright, because if there is copyright obtained, nobody can copy the exact same piece. So this copyright gives Microsoft the exclusive right to make and sell copies of the Windows operating system. So it can sell the Windows operating system and it can sell it on the basis of a particular price. Hence, if a person wants to buy a copy of Windows, he has to pay Microsoft the said amount that the firm has decided to charge for its product. Microsoft is said to have a monopoly in the market for Windows because Microsoft is the only seller or the single seller to produce or to incorporate Windows within this aspect. And giving away Windows or giving away the entire software for a price is considered to be the monopolistic price. Hence, that is concept of monopoly. So, a monopoly such as Microsoft does not have any close competitors and therefore can charge the market price for its product as well as influence it. So, market price can be charged. Hence, the main differences between perfect competition and monopoly. I already told you that monopoly is something where you don't take the price or you make the price. You dictate the prices that we are producing it, nobody else's. So, you buy at our rates. Mercedes, BMW, they are monopolist. So whatever is being done in a perfectly competitive market, all the firms in perfectly competitive market are price takers. Maruti Suzuki, Volkswagen, all these are price takers. They would look at the competitors, they look at the market, and whatever price is determined by the market, they would take. Whereas a monopoly firm is a price maker. Monopoly would make its price on its own, and on that basis, it would function or it would operate. This is considered to be a monopoly. So let's understand what are the reasons for monopoly. A firm is considered to be running a monopoly if it is a sole seller of its product. He is considered to be a monopolist. Its product cannot be easily substitutable. The main reason of monopoly is barrier to entry for other firms that can give competition. Main reason, very, very important. So all these sellers in the market, they have restricted all the barriers to entry, which is why the other firms cannot give them competition. Hence there is monopoly. In a monopoly, the firm remains the only seller in its market because other firms cannot enter the market and compete with it. Hence, the existing firms are considered to be more than sufficient with expertise to fight with or to understand the reasons of for monopoly. So we say that there is a barrier to entry, but why is there a barrier to entry? An important source is owned by a single firm. The government has given a single firm the exclusive right to produce some good or service. The costs of production make a single producer more efficient than a larger number of producers. But in this case, the natural monopolies are an industry is a natural monopoly. What kind of industry? Let's say water industry is a natural monopoly when a single firm can supply a good or service to an entire market at a lower cost than two or three firms. So if there are two or three firms, it cannot be considered to be perfect competition, but still there is competition. If there is some competition, then one person, whatever he gives or whatever he understands or whatever message he gives, that would be considered to be at a lower cost as compared to the two other firms. So distribution of natural resources like water. In order to provide water to the houses of a place, a firm must build a network of pipes throughout the place. So one firm has to build all the network of pipes throughout the place. If two or more firms were to compete in the provision of the service, each firm would have to draw the pipeline or building of network. Thus, the average total cost of water is lowest if a single firm serves the entire market. Single firm is operating like the Indian Railways. Single firm is operating, still it is able to make profit. So, on this basis, we can understand that the average of total cost of water is lowest if a single firm serves the entire market. But if multiple firms serve, then obviously there might be wastage, there might be many other reasons due to which natural monopoly operates. Third is imperfect market. In a competitive market, each firm is small compared to the market and it cannot influence the price of its product and therefore takes a price as determined by the market conditions. In a monopolized market, a single firm supplies the earlier market for a good, and the firm can choose any price and quantity on the market demand curve. So, whatever the quantity is chosen, whatever price is chosen, that is considered to be market demand curve. A type of market, or the first type of imperfect competition, is oligopoly. So, a type of market with only few sellers, each offering a product similar or identical to the others, is known as oligopoly. For example, OPEC, oil. OPEC sells the similar products but not the same products that is considered to be oil. Monopolistic competition. This describes a market structure in which there are many firms selling products that are similar but not identical. Similar products but not identical products. For example, CDs, movies. Three movies come on a particular Friday, and three movies are offering different things. Hence, in that case, all three movies can be taken differently. And in such a market, each firm has a monopoly over the product it makes, but many other firms make similar products that compete for the same customers. So, in order to establish in such an industry, the seller has to incur high levels of advertising cost in order to make them relevant. So, I hope you like the lesson. I'll be coming out with more of such collections. Thank you. Bye.